August 31st, 2023, the One Piece live-action adaptation was released, and a few days after that, I saw a meme about it. This meme specifically. And so the first domino fell. This meme intrigued me because it seemed to be insinuating that a live-action adaptation of a popular anime was good. Now that's just unprecedented. Not only that, but it was working with the original creator, and it wasn't just new fans who were liking it. Existing fans of One Piece were also singing its praises. Being the curious little cat that I am, I thought to myself, now, I have in the past said that there are 3 anime I would probably never get around to on account of them being just too long that it's overwhelming. Those 3 being Naruto, Dragon Ball Z, and yes, One Piece. All of them, there's just so much it is very overfacing to consider getting into in the first place. But an 8-episode live-action series that's received a thumbs up from pre-existing One Piece fans? That sounds much more manageable. And thus, the second domino fell, as I watched the One Piece live-action and got completely enthralled by it. From just minutes into the first episode of the live-action, which I will henceforth refer to as OPLA, no, not Oprah, OPLA, I was hooked. The atmosphere, the music, everything about it, I was swept away into a world of adventure that I couldn't get enough of, and I found myself very quickly having binged the whole series and counted it easily among my favourite shows that I'd watched that year, if not my absolute favourite. And then there's the third domino. Because what was that I said a moment ago? I was swept away into a world of adventure that I couldn't get enough of. A world of adventure that I couldn't get enough of. Now, at first, I was content to say that I can wait until the next season of the live action, but the thought occurred to me, just how different is the live action from the source material anyway? I mean, I could always just watch the anime up to the point that OPLA left off, right? Purely for the purposes of comparison, of course. And so I did. And in the first few episodes, I found the anime a lot goofier than OPLA, and I wasn't too sure about it. So I am kinda glad that I went the OPLA first route, because I at least knew where we were heading with this story, which was of course Arlong Park, an incredibly emotional, impactful story delving into Nami's tragic backstory and showcasing the power of friendship being strong enough to even overcome a big blue fish. So I watched up to the end of Arlong Park in the anime, and I loved it just as much. And then I thought to myself, I kinda wanna know what happens next. I mean, just a couple more episodes, I thought. A preview for myself as to what the next season of OPLA might entail. Except it's probably gonna be a while until we get the next season, especially with a writer's strike throwing schedules up into the air, and damn, I'm starting to get kind of invested in this here Alabasta storyline. And now there was no stopping this rising tide of One Piece. Alabasta, Skypiea, Water 7, Enies Lobby, Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island, I mean Thriller Bark, Shabondi Archipelago, Impel Down, Marineford, oh god, oh fuck, oh shit, you get the picture. And so, now, as of the time of this recording, I am 100% caught up on One Piece. Not just up to episode 1122 of the anime, but I have since read the manga from roughly where the anime left off up to the latest released chapter, which at the time of this recording is chapter 1132. In the span of a single year, I went from someone confident he would never watch One Piece to someone who could not be more caught up with One Piece and who would count One Piece among one of his favourite shows of all time. From someone who thought the opening episodes were too goofy to someone who shed tears over a fictional pirate ship. And so I suppose the question remains, why? What is it about this silly, goofy pirate show that resonated with me so hard? So, full disclosure, I am re-recording this second half of the video. I was toying around, trying out a new style there, but it has to be said that editing that is a lot more exhausting than editing this. Me, hello, here I am, it's me face. So we're going back to my face for the rest of the video while I tell you about One Piece and how it has completely taken over my life. It's hard to quantify what exactly transpired for this show to sink its claws so deeply into me, but one of the first and main things I latched onto, and this is back in the OPLA days, is the overriding feeling and theme of hope. Of the passion for the pursuit of a dream and confidence that that dream can be achieved, no matter how humble or small someone's beginnings are. It was borderline impossible for me to watch this and not go, damn, he's right, I've got some dreams of my own too, and I want to go out and chase them, and I want to get in a big ship. The whole thing, I found it very motivational. Plus, in the world of modern TV, we are somewhat saturated with these dark shows set in various apocalypses, showing off grey morality and the darkness within humanity. So One Piece coming along into the midst of all that was like a true breath of fresh air. This was pure, joyful, childlike wonder in terms of a fantasy show, and it felt like it was truly needed. And I can't talk about that wonderful feeling that I got from the show without giving a massive shout out to the music composers for OPLA. Sonia Belasova and Giona Ostinelli, whose names I hope I'm pronouncing correctly, are the ones who gave us the masterpiece that is the OPLA soundtrack. I can't tell you how long it had been since I had heard a soundtrack that didn't feel like it was afraid to be a part of the thing it was in. To throw out a comparison, now I want to make something clear here. I don't think that the Dark Knight trilogy soundtrack is bad by any stretch, but I do think it has done irreparable damage to the movie and TV score landscape. That really felt like a turning point where a lot more movies and shows opted for these more subtle, understated scores that sort of blend into the background. It became a common refrain for people to say, oh, the best soundtracks are the ones that you don't notice. And to that I would like to say, as eloquently as I can, fuck that. With OPLA, the music is huge, it is orchestral, it is infectious and memorable. There are distinct melodies and motifs for different characters, places, themes. This is what I want in my soundtracks. Big, bombastic, in your face, the kind of music where you can like walk away from the thing a few days later and you will have the song in your head, you will have the music in your head and you can hum it. Those are the kind of soundtracks that I like. And so I adored the One Piece live action soundtrack because it was all of those things. It was music that was as much a character as Luffy or Zoro or Nami was. And it wasn't afraid to stake its place as a factor of the show overall and be like, here it is, here we are. Here's some fucking tunes, let's go. This music wasn't afraid to have an hour-long rap. Not only that, but an hour-long rap that fucking slaps.
Bang! You ready to fight? Bang! Welcome to All Park.
So all that is to say, Sonia and Jonah, good job. Good job. That is among one of the main things that made OPLA hook me the way it did. Now, as for the anime, this took a little longer for me to latch on to. As I mentioned before, I found the early episodes a lot goofier, a lot more childish. Also, the early pacing of the show is vastly different to the pacing in the live action. So I was surprised at how long it took to get to certain moments. And back in those early days, I really wasn't sure that I was gonna like the anime as much as the live action. But boy howdy, I was wrong. Oh boy was I wrong. Because here's the thing. It's not really about the story when it comes to One Piece, which I know sounds ridiculous for a story with over 1100 chapters, but stay with me. It is so much more about how you fall in love with these characters and their individual stories and their interactions with one another and how it keeps pulling you back time after time. I didn't keep clicking on the next episode because I really wanted Luffy to find the One Piece and become the Pirate King in the next episode. I mean, I do eventually want those things to happen, but more so than that, I just wanted to see him.
I want to see my little boy.
Here he comes.
Character and theme are the driving forces here. Luffy, with his overwhelming drive and determination and relentless optimism, a belief in himself so powerful that it uplifts everyone around him even without him trying. Zoro, with his steadfast resolve to keep a promise that he made to his now deceased best friend. Nami being allowed to experience a newfound freedom among her friends after Arlong, truly getting to experience a life that she had been robbed of for the majority of her childhood. Usopp and his struggle with identity and self-worth, his desire to overcome the weaknesses he sees within himself. Sanji with his suave outward expression, his tongue-in-cheek attitude, and his genuine passion for his dream, for his convictions, for his livelihood and title as a cook, for other things. Both he and Zoro have these sort of cool guy personalities, but I really love how while Zoro is more stoic, Sanji is not afraid to completely wear his heart on his sleeve, or in many cases his eyes. And that's just the East Blue Five. That's not even touching on later Straw Hats who joined the crew. That's not even touching on Robin's story, which was so impactful to me that I had to take essentially a sabbatical from watching the show just to let it sink in. But I think you get the idea. The point is that each Straw Hat in their own way is just so lovable, so charming, so relatable in one way or the other. You can't help coming back to see more of their exploits, their shenanigans, their tomfoolery, and their deep, moving, genuine bond with each other as a found family. Even Usopp, who I will admit when he was first introduced in both the live action and the anime, couldn't stand him. Absolutely hated the guy. I was like, is this guy really gonna join the crew? Is this guy gonna be a main character? Gonna be around for the entire rest of this? Even a character who I had that reaction to upon first meeting, by the time we got to Water 7 and the threat of him actually leaving the crew was on the table, I was distraught at just the idea that he might be leaving. So safe to say I've done a full circle on Usopp. I have come around, and these days I am an Usopp defender through and through. With each new crew member, each new island, each new backstory, there is always something to latch onto, something that resonates. Oftentimes that is something to do with a character being on the path to achieve their dream, which is one of the, if not the main driving theme of the entire story. Dreams, inherited will, found family, the power of laughter, freedom, and justice. These are all themes at the forefront of One Piece, and I'm not going to delve too deeply into all of them right now, only to say that these themes are all ones that I enjoy exploring. But the one I want to touch on most is the idea of freedom versus justice, because it's one of the ones that struck me the hardest, possibly because I expected it the least. One Piece does a very good job at baiting you in. You get the surface level, but as you explore further, it becomes a lot deeper than you expect. What begins as a silly, goofy pirate show about a rubber bouncing boy slowly turns into this poignant criticism of oppressive class structures and corrupt systems. We slowly begin to become aware of just how unjust this world is. This world that is run by those who purport to uphold justice. Particularly with the introduction of the Celestial Dragons, a class of untouchable nobles who rule over the world, who claim ultimate authority and are allowed to get away with atrocities, truly despicable acts including slavery, murder, and outright genocide, purely on the basis of having noble birth. The political landscape of One Piece starts taking shape, and we begin to understand that this world is rotten. Even the Marines, who are supposed to be bastions of justice, are beholden to the whims of these scumbags. And we can see sad reflections of our own world in the atrocities committed by the world government and the Marines on their behalf. And in a lot of ways, that is where the fantasy of One Piece comes in. Because the answer to all of this injustice is freedom. And freedom comes in the form of Luffy. In almost every arc, Luffy comes up against someone who is antithetical to freedom, someone who is abusing a position of power, manipulating others, or forcing them into situations or circumstances where they have their free will stripped away. And while in the real world the solution is always going to be more complex than a 19-year-old rocking up and doing a big punch on the big bad guy behind everything, it is infinitely enjoyable and satisfying to watch the fantasy play out in this story. The fantasy provided by Luffy, that there is hope, that there is a solution, that maybe someday it could be that simple. As untouchable and all-powerful as the Celestial Dragons seem, as insurmountable as the justice in our own world seems, when Luffy is around, there is always hope. When Luffy is around, we can always strive to be free. When Luffy is around, anything seems possible. So yeah, One Piece, come for the pirates and wacky superpowers, stay for the surprisingly resonant class commentary. It may not have escaped your notice that for what is often described as a battle shonen, I have not mentioned the battles or the action in this series once. And frankly, that is because character and theme in any story are always going to be what matter more to me. But since that last section got a little bit heavy, I figure let's talk about that now. Yay, powers, yay, fighting. Woo! Let's go! As a piece of world building, the fact that no two devil fruits can ever be the same, I think is a genius move on the part of Oda, because that means no two people we see fighting ever have the same power. It forces the powers that we see in the show to get wackier and weirder and more creative as the series goes on. Some of the powers that we see are downright stupid in some moments, either in terms of how powerful they are or how much they turn you into a jacket. But ultimately, seeing two wildly different power sets go up against each other is infinitely more creative and more entertaining to watch than watching two people with the same powers just duke it out. Not to name any names, but the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So I love how weird the show allows itself to get with its action. I love the gradual growth in power that we see in the Straw Hats themselves. I love that the world, even after over 1,000 episodes, still has so much mystery and history and depth to it, and it feels like there are still vast swathes of it still to explore. I love the creativity of every fight scene, and I love how the fights that we see inform the characters that we see fighting. For example, how Sanji only fights with kicks because he needs his hands for cooking, which is incredibly important to him. While I will reiterate that character and theme are always going to be what matter most to me, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I don't enjoy the fights as well. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I'm immune to the hype. I'm not going to sit here and pretend I didn't cheer when Luffy punched Charlos, when Whitebeard turned up at Marineford, when all of the Straw Hats assembled at Onigashima. That was some good stuff right there. But those moments, in particular that last moment, wouldn't be nearly as hype if it weren't for the fact that we have spent so much time with these characters, getting to know them, getting to know their backstories and their motivations and their personalities. So again, it does come back around to character being the main focus. But on the flip side, some of it there is no deeper meaning. Some of it, it's just downright cool, and that's okay. Also, the music in the anime is very good as well. In fact, several songs off it made it into my Spotify Wrapped for this year. So there we are. The final domino has fallen, and I am now sat here eagerly anticipating the next released chapter of Elbaf, a One Piece fan through and through. I never thought that I would get so swept up by this. I never thought that I would watch over 1,100 episodes of any show, but alas, it has happened, because when Luffy is around, anything is possible. So that's the story of my One Piece journey, how one story just consumed my life for an entire year and probably will also next year as well. There is certainly more I could say about One Piece, and probably more that I will, and I maybe could have spoken more eloquently on some points that I was making back in the video, but I hope that I've gotten across the broad strokes of why this show started to resonate with me so much, why this show ended up meaning so much to me. If you are like me now, a devoted One Piece fan, then I hope maybe you've been able to relate to my journey here. Or if you're more like me at the start of the video and you think, I'm never gonna get into this, then I hope that maybe I have managed to convince you, even just a little bit, that it is worth it. No matter what, I hope you've enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you all so much for watching this video, and I will see you in my next one. Bye bye.